Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. It's like they say a lot of business gets done on the golf course. A lot of stuff gets done at the combine. My guess was that Justin Fields would be moved from the Bears to Atlanta around the combine. That you just, you get a couple beers, guys sit down. And what my guess, the way Justin Fields would work is that, I don't know exactly what you do, but like the Bears have the 9th pick, Atlanta's got the 8th pick. Maybe you swap those in a third rounder, something like that feels reasonable. So the Bears move up one slot and get a third rounder. That feels like something you could do for Justin Fields. I don't think he's going to be a superstar in Atlanta, but I do think you can argue he'll be the most talented quarterback in the NFC South, where he's just not. He's not as good as Jared Goff, and I don't think he at this point is trending to be nearly as good as Jordan Love. So if Kirk Cousins comes back for 2 years, Kirk Cousins right now is a more efficient quarterback than Justin Fields. And so he would be the 4th most reliable quarterback in the division. That's not a good place for him. I think it's a much better place for him to go to Atlanta, where, Baker and Derek Carr are, they can win a lot of games, especially Baker. He's won a playoff game. He's a playoff quarterback in the AFC and the NFC. But in terms of overall size and talent, whip, arm, Justin's a pretty special player. So the combine to me, and we sent John Middlecoff there for the volume, the combine's really a relationship. It's like a camp for football grown-ups where you get all the GMs and the personnel people, and they screw around, they have steak dinners, and you get a lot of business done. I don't care much about the players testing. It's like these personal workouts and testing. I do think, there's a trend over the last several years that quarterbacks don't throw at this thing. I think every draft has a really interesting player. I think without question, everybody knows it's good wide receiver, good offensive tackle class, really good. 3 or 4 really high-end receivers, 3 or 4 really good offensive tackles. You could have 6 offensive tackles taken in the first round. That's a huge number. The quarterbacks, there's a lot of talent. But I think the most interesting player in the draft is going to be J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, who had a great coach, a great O-line, a great run game, and a great defense in a conference, frankly, that's kind of Ohio State and everybody else outside of Michigan. That's about the only team Michigan faced that has equal talent. In the SEC, even though Alabama can be great, there's Georgia, there's LSU. There's a lot of teams that can stack up athletically, 3 or 4 teams at the top. Ohio State and Michigan just look different than everybody else, and McCarthy benefited from that. Now, he won a lot of games, but they didn't really rely on him. He didn't throw many touchdown passes. As his biggest games were often against, he had, I think it was half of his touchdown passes against 3 teams, all of them awful. East Carolina, Michigan State, and Indiana. He had half of his touchdown totals. McCarthy, to me, though, my big concern is he's really slender. And let me give an example. So I've used this before, is that Aaron Rodgers and I are the same height. And I've seen Aaron a couple times up close. He doesn't look thick. He weighs 225 pounds. I'm the same height, and I weigh 195. I work out every day. I'm in pretty good shape. You would view me as slender. If you looked at Aaron, you would view him as sort of slender. He carries 30 pounds more than me at the same height. Chest, shoulders, butt. It's that thickness. Years ago, I asked somebody about Aaron. I said, he doesn't look that big. And this person said, look at his calves. Look at his butt. Look at his shoulders. Look at his wrists. There's a difference. When Johnny Manziel came into the league, he didn't have the size and the shoulders, the butt, the hips, the wrist. He just wasn't big enough. And so I look at J.J. McCarthy, and he's 6'3", so he is taller than Aaron Rodgers by 1.5 inches, and he weighs 20 to 23 pounds less. That's noticeable to me. He comes across as slender. And, it's somebody, an NFL executive said he looks like a stretched out Bryce Young. And I never thought of that. But in the context of body types, it kind of matches. And so I think McCarthy's fascinating. I know 2 people who I really like in the NFL executives think he's a ham and egger, just don't really see it. I know somebody else, Randy Mueller, a former executive in the league, works for The Athletic now, really likes J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh loves him. He's rooting for his guys. I don't know quite what to make of him. Now, I didn't like Zach Wilson of the Jets out of college. I like J.J. McCarthy more. I think he throws a better ball and a more consistent ball. I didn't like Johnny Manziel out of college. I think J.J. McCarthy's a much, much better prospect. Um, I didn't like Tebow at all out of college, obviously. I mean, Tebow couldn't throw a consistent NFL football. It's not like I don't think he has talent. I do think JJ has talent, but the body type, it's a completely different sport. I mean, the NFL, I remember when Johnny Manziel came into the league, and he was a runaround guy, gave Alabama's great defenses all sorts of fits. And I think it was a preseason game. He's playing for Cleveland. I think they played Washington. Is that the one where he gave somebody the finger? And he rolled out, and he thought, I'm going to get around this defensive end, and he could not outrun a defensive end in the NFL. And in that moment, I'm like, yep, not going to work, because his game is movement. It's just not going to work. Lamar Jackson moves. You can't stop him. Michael Vick moved. Steve Young moved. They got around the corner. So a lot of times, you play in college, high school and college, and what works for you does not work, does not translate to the NFL. So I'm just fascinated with J.J. McCarthy to see if it does. I just don't quite see it. Now, you would say, Colin, you didn't see C.J. Stroud. No. I said Lance Zierlein, who works at NFL.com, a draft analyst, he said Jared Goff was his comp. And I said probably 10 times on the air, that's a good comp. Out of college, I didn't see a lot of juice with Jared Goff, but I thought he threw a beautiful ball from the pocket. I didn't see a lot of juice until the Georgia game on C.J. Stroud, but he throws a beautiful ball out of the pocket. And Zierlein was on the herd yesterday on FS1 and talked about that people give him crap for that. But if you go look at Jared Goff's second-year numbers and C.J. Stroud's first-year numbers, C.J. got a great first coach. Jared Goff didn't. They're very similar. So J.J. McCarthy is going to be really, really interesting to me. Like this was the best Michigan team perhaps ever, and the best team in college football, I thought, significantly, with a great O-line and a really powerful run game and a great coach. Very Alabama-like. And if you start looking at all these Alabama quarterbacks, the Bryce Youngs and the Tuas, they looked, Mac Jones, boy, did we really like them out of college. And then you get to the NFL behind an average offensive line and you don't really have a number one receiver. That's what J.J. McCarthy feels like to me. The great coach, the great O-line, the great run game, the great defense support, playing with a lead, getting very good field position, just like Tua and Mac Jones and Alabama quarterbacks time and time again. Then they get into the NFL and they trail and they don't have a good offensive line and they're moving. And J.J. McCarthy weighs 6'3", 203 pounds, and he probably needs 22 pounds more with that size. So we'll see. He is, to me, the most interesting player in the first round.